Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Columbia Planning and Zoning Commission. First up, roll call and seating of alternates. So we will be seating Walter Tabor for Rich Napolitano. Rich, you're here.
Rich actually
We
just
have
got
all
here,
of our
yeah.
regular members here. Is Vera here?
Yes, Vera's here. Justin is not here, so Walt can sit for Justin.
Okay, so we will seat Walter Tabor for Justin. We go in a sequence of who's been seated. Paula, any additions or changes to the agenda?
None.
Okay. The minutes of March 14th, 2022, I did not attend that meeting. I did review the minutes in detail, but I won't vote on accepting the minutes. Any corrections or changes as they were presented?
No.
Can I have a member of the commission make a motion to accept them as presented?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
That's by Bob Powell. A second.
I'll second it.
Any
Tom.
discussion? Is there any discussion? None. I'll take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented, either raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And I will abstain from that vote because I did not attend that meeting. So that is,
And
I
Walt,
am abstaining.
I will abstain as well.
Walt is abstaining because he did not attend. Okay.
Rich will too.
Rich, you're
Yes.
abstaining?
Yep.
Okay. All the rest of the votes are aye and 3 abstentions, no nays. Under audience of citizens, I would ask every member of the public to please mute your microphone until you recognize to speak. Members, please leave your microphones on if you're comfortable. It's your choice. Audience of citizens, anything that anyone would like to bring up to us that isn't already on the agenda? Ms. Briggs?
Thank you. I realize we're speaking at the public hearing, but I did want to comment on the item 7 on the agenda.
No, you can't do that at this. This is for items that are not on the agenda. You know, if you want to.
Why would it, pardon my ignorance, but why would I have to
I'm not
wait?
going to explain. Item 7 is where we accept an application that we will set a public hearing date for, and that's all we do. And we're not at the point of. Carol,
Mr. Nass, if
Ms. Briggs,
I've been to prior
please-
meetings where
please
you've
mute
allowed me
that-
to comment
please
on
mute that
items on the
microphone.
agenda.
Please mute that microphone. So if it's something that is on our agenda, and in this case, we will be setting a public hearing date, all comments about that application can be attended to at the public hearing. So first up, we do have anything else under audience of citizens that isn't already on our agenda? Okay. We're going to move into a public hearing mode out of our regular meeting mode. We do have a zoning. Ms. Briggs can speak at that time on her. She's one of several members that have proposed a repeal of a zoning amendment application to repeal section 52.7.5, the event/wedding venue facilities. And there was one other section that was mentioned in an email. That said, the person speaking to this, Ms. Briggs, if you'd like to speak about that, I'd be happy.
before you start, I just wanted to, for the record, state that the abutting towns and their council of governments were notified of this per Connecticut state statutes, as required by statutes, more than 30 days prior. And also there was a legal notice in the Chronicle notifying people.
So before we open this up to presentation, so when you're speaking in the public hearing, please make sure that you're recognized by myself before you speak. Otherwise, please keep your microphone muted. Please identify yourself, your name and address. And that's pretty much it. If we have a very large number of comments, we'll try to manage those comments, but I think we have enough time for everybody to, obviously, everybody will get a chance to speak to this, and we will go from there. So first up is the applicant, Ms. Briggs.
Yes, it's sections 9, 21.23, 52.7, 52.75, 62.5 are all the sections that we're asking for changes to.
Noted.
They're all identified in the application. It is a complete application, unlike the one that's being submitted in item 7. And with regard to the application, it is completely in harmony with Connecticut General Statute 8.2 that speaks to when regulation amendments can be considered. For zoning regulations, they have to be made in accordance with a comprehensive plan and in consideration of the plan of conservation and development adopted under 8-23. I'll come back to that point. They have to be designed to lessen congestion in the streets. We are asking to remove the possibility of event halls being built in RA zones throughout town. That will certainly lessen congestion. Promote the health and general welfare. Again, traffic congestion, safety from people visiting commercial venues in the middle of a residential area, which in our town is completely unexpected. Our commercial ventures are all located on the corridors of 6 and 66. And it's we're supposed to be considering the impact of permitted land use on contiguous municipalities. Certainly this one is on the border with Lebanon and would affect them as well. And finally, it is also to be drafted with a view towards encouraging the most appropriate use of land throughout a municipality, as well as consideration to the physical site characteristics of the district and its peculiar suitability for particular uses. We are reducing, we are asking to reduce the possibility of commercial activities occurring in an RA zone. And that is entirely consistent with the plan of conservation and development. Looking at page 6 of the plan of conservation speaks to one of the community goals. Future plan pattern of development will need to meet the needs of our residents and preserve our rural character. Housing, it's supposed to make sure new subdivisions will create neighborhoods and enhance Columbia's rural character. If these have to be 25-acre parcels of land, that's removing a lot of potential land for housing stock. With regard to business and economic development, the goals are that it is to promote the Route 6 Hop River Corridor Master Plan and development along Route 6 and Route 66. It is entirely consistent, our regulation amendment, with the goal of focusing commercial activities on the commercial corridors. Ag, it's intended to preserve farmland. Certainly 25-acre parcels of land, especially the one that was most recently at issue on this, has a large quantity of prime farmland soils that would be lost to commercial development. We're losing our ag land very rapidly and we want to preserve it. And that's of a high importance in the plan of conservation and development. Page 9 of the conservation and development lists what they call SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The reg amendment we have will address all of the potential threats by minimizing them. One of the threats is overdevelopment, losing our middle class, loss of rural character. By eliminating the possibility of these commercial activities in a rural, in a residential zone. Oh, opportunities, farmland preservation. So so we're creating opportunities and reducing threats to the under the plan of conservation. Page 15 of the plan of conservation and development speaks to the survey that was done of the town. 100% of the people said retain the rural character is the most important thing that we could do. Page 20 addresses ag protection and speaks to preserving ag resources for the property. Going on to what's really a critical piece is a quote that's in here from a planner that was apparently heavily consulted in the preparation of this. And it says Columbia is very fortunate that the rural character valued by our residents is still very much in evidence. To maintain our rural character, Columbia must balance future development with the conservation of our natural and cultural resources. Randall Arendt, noted expert on preserving rural character, while it continues to grow, recommends changing pattern of development to one that reflects our heritage. He notes, one only need look at communities with no discernible structure to realize that community character is adversely affected by random development without thought to overall community structural and organization. This reg amendment would seek to put that in action, eliminating random commercial activity in a residential zone. Pervasive through this, again, page 47 of our plan of development speaks to a goal of future pattern of development meeting the needs of the residents while preserving our rural character. Explore revising commercial zones to include other potentially developable areas within them. Review the regs and revise to protect the natural and cultural resources and enhance Columbia's rural character. That's exactly what our reg amendment will do. Housing, with regard to housing, we are supposed to be promoting new subdivision activities. If we're going to take out 25 acres lots for event halls, we're going to be eliminating a lot of housing capabilities. You folks are addressing multifamily housing needs that we're supposed to be addressing in town. Well, those parcels, the 25-acre parcels, are the ones where you can put a multifamily housing project. And by allowing commercial development, we're precluding that as an opportunity. And on page 57, there's a further survey of how the people wanted property to be used for commercial. Restaurants are very high. Ag-related enterprises is the next highest use. So again, we are trying to retain commercial activity within the existing, they said the majority of responses indicated that commercial activities should be either near existing businesses or along Route 6 or 66. Absolutely no one has said they want these commercial event halls stuck in the middle of residential areas. Again, pervasive through the plan of conservation and development is the preserving the character of the community. Chapter 10, the entire chapter deals with promoting and protecting agricultural uses by not concentrating commercial event halls on 25-acre parcels that are capable of farming. We are helping promote and preserve the opportunity for large tracts of land to continue to be used for agriculture. Shooting ahead, page 112 of the Plan of Conservation and Development and page 114 have really the critical points of the Plan of Conservation and have laid out what we wanted our town to look like. And when you look at 112, the map, it shows, potential economic development areas located solely along Route 6 and 66. And the residential areas being retained and forestry habitats overlaid on that. But when you get to page 114, it lays out the growth management principles. Principle 1, redevelop, revitalize regional centers in areas with existing or currently planned physical infrastructure. Economic development contain elements that are consistent with this general growth management goal, including mixed use area in the center of town along Route 66. Growth management principle 2, expand housing. Again, by preserving large tracts for housing, that's keeping with our rural character and exactly what the surveys of our residents has indicated is important to them. Growth management principle 3, that the economic development chapter concentrates development around transportation nodes and along major transportation corridors. Again, focusing growth along 6 and 66. Growth management principle 4, conserve and restore the natural environment, cultural and historical resources and traditional rural lands. Again, preserving ag, preserving our communities. Growth principle 5, ensuring the integrity of environmental assets critical to public health and safety. We believe we're doing that by making sure that the uses within a residential area are all consistent with the RA zone and not dropping isolated commercial activities that are significantly out of character with the neighborhood. Growth management. 6 is integrated planning along with the government levels of government to address issues. Recognize Columbia's role in regional economy, especially along the Route 6 Hop River corridor. So again, we're focusing all through our plan of conservation and development on the existing areas that everybody in town knows where the commercial activities are. And we're not trying to dump them on isolated nice pieces of tracts of land in the middle of residential agricultural zones within the town. And that would be my presentation with respect to the application that we're submitting, that it is entirely consistent and should be adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments very much. So is there anyone else now that would like to speak on this? If you could either raise your hand or indicate through Zoom that you want to speak, and I'll recognize you. At that point, you can unmute and we'll have one person at a time commenting. And in case I can't see everybody on my screen, if I'm missing you.
If there's nobody else speaking in favor of the applicant,
There is Mr. Kabala had his hand up. I'm going to
Okay.
recognize him for right now.
of course, yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your name?
Yes, I know. Paul Kabala from 37 Lake Road. By approving this application in an industrial, in a residential area, does that set a precedence for all residential area that might want to go to a commercial or an industrial application?
Mr. Kabala, we're not talking about an application right now. We're talking about a request for a change to our current regulations. So
Well, I
this
think
public hearing is about, hear me out. So this public hearing is about a request from members of the public to modify our regulations to eliminate a provision that we previously enacted.
Well, by either approving or disapproving, removing the applicant, you are changing the whole substance of what I was asking. Okay, so you're going to say that I'm not, I shouldn't be talking about what I'm talking about.
Well, what I'm saying is this public hearing is for the repealing of a previously adopted modification to our planning and zoning regulations. That's what this public hearing is about. If you're not speaking to that, then those comments probably are coming in at the wrong time.
Well, I do have a comment about the whole thing. I hope you don't repeal the application, because I am somewhat in favor with other thoughts on this type of development in town. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there somebody else who would like to speak? Carol? Mr. Brulard, would you like to wait till, is it Mark Brulard?
Yes, I think it might be appropriate and my comments will be brief, but certainly I'll wait until everybody else has had an opportunity to.
Okay, thank you.
address.
So the next hand up I saw was Carol Williamson.
Yeah, Rick, I would also agree with everything that Carol said, but I think you really need to go back and follow the proper procedure when it comes to adopting new regulations in town. And that means you need to go back and review the plan of development and conservation before you enact new regulations and really go over it and discuss it, which was not done with this application. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to speak on this?
Somebody has
Hi,
their
Rick.
hand up.
Greg Mooney has his hand raised.
Pardon me?
Greg Mooney has his hand raised.
Okay, Greg, please go ahead. I
Yeah,
recognize you.
Greg Mooney, 39 Golden Road.
Thank you.
You know, I just want to speak on behalf to the commission. We've been at this for a little bit. You know, Carol's argued her case. We've all argued our cases. You've heard a lot from us. And I really just want the commission to, you know, recognize that this is something that the community is in favor of. I hope you guys can represent us rather than maybe focusing on, you know, one individual, not even an individual, a business entity. We've kind of beaten it around. This is, if you read that plan of conservation, it says exactly what we're saying. And I really just want to speak to you guys and hope you can, you know, approve that amendment to remove what was previously done. So, you know, I'm asking you just to represent us in the community. So that's my only add on.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you. Next up would be Scott James.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott James and I live on 36 Gollen Road. What I'd like to say is I'm in favor of this amendment. Obviously, I signed it. And I believe it stops a situation with spot zoning anywhere in the town. Also, to the board and to the citizens of Columbia, please ask yourself this question. Would I like a party venue built next to me anywhere in town in an RA zone? And if the answer is no, then you should be in favor of this amendment. And that's about all I got to say. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Next up, I have somebody, Nikki.
Hi, Rick. Yep, Nikki Kelson, 5 Baker Hill Road. So I was part of the plan of conservation from the recreation side. So I know from that side that a lot of effort went into putting that together. So from surveying the residents, from putting, you know, writing it. So I actually think that is a really, really important piece of important document to consider. So I appreciate that was brought to light, brought back up. And I agree with what my neighbors say, that really needs to be considered. And for those that are saying that, you know, they support this venue, if it were, I agree also, if it were in your backyard and put, you know, down the street from you, that I don't know that you would want that either. My other question though is, if this is repealed, I would hope that places like you know, that are already in place and zoned like that, are there any, I guess the question is, are there any other places that are zoned like this currently?
Well, to answer your question, if I might, for clarification, this zone wasn't on a specific parcel of property. It was for the entire town. So if a piece of land is meeting with the definition and the regulations anywhere in an RA zone in town, then it would apply to that part, all parcels that are in RA zones that meet the configuration requirements. Does that answer your question?
No. So this is, nobody else is currently in this situation. It would be a new zone, like somebody, then it would kind of open the floodgates.
It's not a new zone. This is a regulation that's in place, that applies to every piece of land in an RA zone in Columbia that meets the criteria that would allow it to potentially, the modification was to the entire RA zone in Columbia.
Yeah, so it would open the floodgates, basically.
I don't know whether it would open floodgates or not. I do know that the regulation as it exists on in our regulations allows for this type of approach to a piece of land in an RA zone that meets the criteria.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other comments from the public? So if there's no one else, am I missing anybody? I think I have everybody on my screen, but there's 2 pages here. Okay, absent any other comments from the public, I would encourage anyone else that would like to speak to speak. Mr.
Yes,
Goulart?
good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Mark Goulart. I'm a lawyer in Woodstock, St. Ange and Goulart, and I represent Valley Street Enterprise Investments LLC. I'll keep my comments not concerning a specific project. There'll be future dates for that, but I will address the amendment that is before you this evening. I'll try to keep my remarks brief. Valley Street Investment does oppose this zoning amendment, seeking a repeal of 52.7.5. As you know, this was approved by this commission in a 6-to-1 vote in August 2021, less than approximately about 7 months ago. This amendment was approved after meetings with the applicant, preliminary meetings, with a public hearing, with input from citizens, commission members, and particularly town staff. And I would note particularly Section K, and that section was primarily drafted by your town planner. There has been no change in circumstances since you adopted this regulation in August 2021. There was some opposition to the adoption of this amendment. However, no appeal was taken to the Superior Court. Anybody who opposed the adoption of this regulation waived their right to take an appeal when they didn't do so. They could have gone to the Superior Court. In my view, the Superior Court would not have overturned this decision. I think that this commission acted properly in accordance with your regulations and in accordance with Connecticut law. This attempt at repeal is, in my view, an improper and backdoor attempt at an appeal of your decision. I think Section 8.8-3 of the Connecticut General Statutes, I think, in my view, would afford this commission the opportunity not to even entertain this application because it involves the same essentially petition on opposite sides within 12 months. I won't talk about my client and his track record. I think that's left for another date. And I'm not going to go tit for tat with the plan of development. I think that much thought went into this regulation. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination, it's not in accordance with your plan of development. I think it will be something, and as you know, it's very limiting in the number of events. There was an application that was previously filed that was withdrawn because it was felt that there was not enough time to consider a significant change in the application. And that is no longer going to be a tent for, and I don't want to get into the specific application, but in any event, there wasn't enough time, so it was refiled, and that will be the subject of a new meeting. And it is, as you know, on your agenda tonight. So I would respectfully request that this commission deny this attempt to overturn a validly approved amendment to your zoning regulations. Thank you, and I appreciate the time you've given me this evening.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone, other members of the public that would like to speak? Anything else that needs to be said? Now would be the time with regard to this request for the modification or repeal. Mr. Glaude?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Greg Glaude from Killingly Engineering Associates with a place of business of 114 Westcott Road in Danielson. And I just wanted to speak on behalf of Valley Street Investments as well. As you know, I was the one who orchestrated and did the text amendment with this very commission last year. And I just wanted to state for the record that, you know, we did go through a great deal of planning with the text amendment. Maybe the public's not aware of it. I know this commission is, but we did meet with you on a preliminary basis, a preliminary discussion back in February of last year. And then we spent 2 months working on the input from the commission and also working with the town's planner to craft these very regulations that are being asked to be removed tonight. We worked out those modifications, and then we went to 2 public hearings, both in July and August. And then in August, those regulations were approved. And that was with a great deal of feedback from this commission. I believe there was some public there as well, and also input again from the town planner. We were very open, and we tried to keep this very restrictive so that there would be a great deal of protection for the surrounding neighbors. I mean, some of the things that we were told to try to mirror or mimic in these regulations was the allowed winery events, which are also allowed in the residential zone under the special permit format as this is. And actually, if you look at those regulations versus these regulations, the wine events, they're allowed 20 events per year. We actually took it one step further, and we're only asking for 15 events per year. They are allowed to have theirs on 20 acres. We were actually asking for 25 acres, making it a bigger parcel of land, again, to better serve and protect the neighborhood that it may be in. They have a minimum that they can hold their events with tents or buildings 175 feet from a residence. Ours is 300 feet that we asked for. So we were a little bit more restrictive. And I know there were a lot of input from the commission asking that would help protect the neighborhood. And I think through the special permit process, if we were allowed to finish when we started with our last application, I think a lot of the concerns and all of the concerns would have been addressed. And the only other thing I would point out in what I saw tonight in the presentation is they were asking for, preserving agricultural land. Well, this is a step of preserving agricultural land. It's not like we're taking the full 40 acres that is owned by this applicant and developing the whole thing. All of the agricultural fields are going to be preserved. We're asking for one building to be used in the middle of it. So it is a way of preserving it. And I think there was a little bit of conflict there, because if you're trying to preserve agricultural, the biggest thing that's chewing up agricultural land in this day and age is residential development. So there was a lot of conflict that was presented tonight about preserving residential and agricultural. It's the kind of I see the residential in my business as the one thing that's chewing up all of the agricultural land. And I just wanted to point that out, and that's all I have to say. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from members of the public or anybody who has something to say about this?
Mr. Stump has something that he would like to say. He's trying to raise his
Mr. Stump,
hand.
please go ahead.
Can you unmute yourself? I don't see him now.
Who's there?
I know.
Baker Hill Road,
I see you now.
in Columbia.
Mr. Stump, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm at 4 Baker Hill Road, right around the corner from this proposal in Columbia. And
Well,
I
we're
would-
not speaking to a proposal. We're speaking to the regulation modification that's proposed by the group of people.
Okay, well, I want to officially support Ms. Briggs and her application, because exactly I agree with all of the reasons that she has already presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? We have enough time, if anybody needs to address again, we're wide open to it. I hope everybody's DVRing the UConn basketball game tonight. I am. Please, no discussion about the progress.
Mr. Chairman, I do have one further comment if I
Mr. Brulard.
to just add. I didn't want to focus on the new application that's on your agenda tonight, but I would note that pursuant to, and I'm not trying to, you'll get your own legal advice from your town attorney who I've spoken to, but any new application that's been filed will be decided under the old application, under the regulations.
I think we're quite aware of that. Thank
Okay,
you.
and I just meant to point that out to you, and I don't mean to be presumptuous and give you legal advice, but I'm sure you are aware of it. So thank you for that.
I have a hand up from Christina Turkildson. Is that the correct way to pronounce your name?
Yes, it actually is.
Thank you.
Hi, I am Christina Turkelson of 130 Route 66, formerly of 41 Golden Road in Columbia. And I am definitely in support of this application because it is obviously what the people of this town are wanting. And if we are all in such support for this application, then I think that stands for a heck of a lot. Since we are the people of this town, and is that not what this committee should represent, the people of this town?
Okay, thank you for your comments. We appreciate them. Ms. Briggs, did you have something additional that you would like?
I did.
Recognize you.
Thank you. First of all, the reason Mr. Burrard doesn't go tat for tat or point by point on the plan of conservation and development is because if anybody actually did that to the last regulation amendment from last summer, it never would pass. As for whether or not an application that's been submitted tonight is under the old regs, depends on whether it's accepted. And since it isn't a complete application, it shouldn't get accepted, and therefore it's not under the old regs. If this gets approved and
Okay, would
published before
appreciate
that
you
application is submitted completely.
I would appreciate you limiting your comments to this
I understand. You
issue
allowed
at
Mr.
hand.
Bernard.
And
However, you allowed
general comments are acceptable.
Mr.
but
Nassif, you allowed Mr. Bernard to comment on his. I'm just responding so that everybody
think
has
he-
full knowledge, because it's not fair to have one-sided presentations. Is it?
That isn't how I look at what he said.
Oh,
he
that's
did
exactly
make a
what he
general
said.
statement.
It's exactly, he said his application has to be
Okay.
dealt with under the old regs. Mr. Glaude dealt with his application. We're not dealing with an application.
We're not going to go on
dealing
and
with a
on
reg
about
amendment.
that specific item that's
Agreed.
later on in our agenda.
Agreed.
Now,
We're dealing with a
what
reg
would you
amendment
like to
that has
say?
townwide applicability. And that's our concern. And the fact that wineries, which are an ag-dependent business, are permitted, are wholly in opposite to a commercial development that isn't dependent on being on agricultural property. So comparing one to the other is entirely inappropriate. We are in an RA zone, not just an R zone, not just an A zone. And you have put together special permit regulations that do address the concerns people would have about having a farm winery next door. And from what I can understand, it's a rousing success. That doesn't appear to be the same with the concerns that have been raised with regarding to have a commercial event hall space next door to you. All set.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else? I see, Christine, I see your hand is still up. I assume, is it safe to assume you're not still looking to make a comment?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I forgot to turn it down.
Okay. Is there anyone else who has something that they would like to say in the public hearing about this request for a zoning regulation change? Okay. Would any members of the commission, anything that you have questions about this regulation change? Okay. That being said.
I do.
Okay, Rich Napolitano.
I was just curious, how many people responded to the POCD, since we're talking about 100% of the towns, just for my knowledge?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, a statistic would use that 100% of the people like what's in the POCD. So how many people in town responded to it? I believe it was like
I don't think people
200.
responded to the plan of conservation and development. I think what the reference was with regard to the specific data that was in the POCD that was used as part of the public testimony when we adopted it. And each different part of it was probably part of a different amount of input from different subgroups and commissions. And so it's hard to answer your question without all of that information available.
I'm not framing my question right. A number was come up that 100% of the people in the POCD liked it or were in favor of the outline of the POCD, but that's only
I would
about
ask
200
the
residents.
person who made that comment to see what they could say to back up that comment.
That was Carol Briggs.
Yeah, Carol Williamson.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be a great item to clarify. Carol, I recognize you. Is that it, Rich?
I can clarify
Yeah.
that for you, Rick.
Sure.
Okay,
Back in approximately 1999, I was on the Conservation Commission. We sent out a survey to every household in Columbia. We got about a third of the households replying, which is a very good reply rate for that type of thing. And 100% of the households wanted to retain the rural character of the town of Columbia. That's where that number came from. And
Okay.
if you look at other surveys in other communities, 10, 12, 15% is about the average return on those type of surveys. And that the survey has been repeated several times, and it always comes back the same, and they always get approximately the same number of returns, if that helps you clarify the information.
I know the last survey was closer to like 200 residents. I couldn't remember the exact number. It was far less the last time we did the POCD. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you. At least I know where you came from on it.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public that have something, or any member in attendance, any person in attendance that has anything else that they would like to say as part of the public hearing? Let me ask the members of the commission, is there any desire to take action on this request tonight? If so, we would have to close the public hearing, or should we continue the public hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting, where we can consider whether to close it at that time and whether we want to take action that evening? Any thoughts? I'm asking commission members now.
Hey,
I caught
I'd like
something
to-
from you,
I'd like-
Tom. Bob?
Yeah, I'd like to postpone it for 2 weeks and then take action.
Okay. So let's, any other thoughts from commission members? So let me make a motion to continue this public hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is, help me out, everyone. It's the 11th, I believe, April 11th.
Excuse me, Rick, are you keeping it open in order to hear additional testimony?
Well, my standard practice has been not to close a public hearing typically until the night where we might
Okay.
potentially take action in case we want to hear anything
Okay.
additional, because we would be precluded from hearing anything additional that might come up if we've closed the public hearing, even if we haven't taken action. So there's really no disadvantage to continuing the public hearing. That's how we've handled nearly every public hearing. We aren't in a rush to close them, so that we're in a position to accept any additional information. If somebody heard something and they want to offer further testimony at our next session, then they would be in a position to be able to do that. So I'll make a motion that we continue this, and I just want to confirm the date of our next meeting. I'm looking that up as I speak.
I believe it's April 11th.
April 11th, I thought it was, but I was confirming that. I don't want to put out anything that's incorrect.
Rick?
Yes,
Yeah, Walt Tabor.
I will.
There's actually there's a tangent issue here that we probably want to recognize. And that is that
We have a motion on the table. I'll withdraw my motion. It wasn't seconded.
that's why I'm bringing it in as I do. It was brought to our attention by the attorney for the for the Valley Street Investments, I believe it is.
Correct.
That their application can be received if it's complete tonight.
Correct.
The need for us to make a decision, if it's going to be made tonight, would put that all in perspective. And I just say, for example, if we were to act on this tonight and we were to respond in that we repeal this regulation tonight, And I'm not saying what's right or right and what's wrong is wrong. I'm not having an opinion at this point, but the significance of the timing here is that if we vote to repeal it tonight, and because the application for Valley Street investments is incomplete, we choose not to accept it, then we would change the entire perspective of their application. If, on the other hand, we decide to table this for next week, that would give Valley Street investments an opportunity to come back a second time to complete their application. And I just want to bring that up only because it does change the position of all parties in this, both the applicants for the repeal, the applicants for Valley Street investments, and us. And I'll leave it at that.
I understand what you're saying.
So we might want to
Okay.
rethink at this point whether or not we choose to act tonight or not.
Well, that's a valid comment. What's the preference of the commission? Bob wanted to continue the public hearing until our next meeting, which is in fact April 11th. I made a motion to do that. I withdrew my motion. You made your comment. What's the preference of the Planning and Zoning Commission? Because that begs another question, that if the application isn't complete, what and we have a public hearing on an application, we need to be very consistent with the way we've handled applications in the past. I don't know that it does make a large difference on how we would approach this application. So that being said, I don't necessarily completely concur with your perspective on it, Walt, but I respect your opinion, you know that. Other members of the commission, anyone wish to weigh in on this? Absent any comments from the commission, I think it was just,
Excuse me.
Bob's got his hand up.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It just
Bob.
takes me a while to push the mute button, or the unmute button. I really want to give other parties in the town the opportunity to weigh in on this application. And that's one of the reasons I want to postpone it for 2 more weeks. Certainly, we've heard comments from people that are directly affected by the potential application for Valley investments. I'd like to hear from people from other parts of the town that would be either in favor or not in favor of repealing or changing the regulations. So I think giving a 2-week break will allow other people to come in and possibly voice their opinions. This one obviously is in limbo. If we were to act on the other application, what is it, number 7 or 8 on the agenda? I'm not sure from a legal standpoint what happens. So.
understood.
My understanding is that when an application is submitted to the town, which comes across the counter in the land use department, the commission accepts it at the next regularly scheduled meeting. I have reviewed the application. I did not find anything missing from the application. That doesn't mean that there's some component of it that you may want more information on, but all the plans were submitted, including the architectural drawings, because there's a building being proposed now. They're still going through wetlands, so the commission would not be able to approve an application, but wetlands would have to make a decision. I don't know if it'll be the wetlands agent or the actual wetlands commission that would make the decision, but that would need to be determined or approved prior to the commission, the PZC being able to approve it.
The question, again, the question would be a matter of timing. Is an application considered meeting the regulations when it's submitted or when it's approved?
When it's submitted.
When it's submitted. So
The
if
rules,
if
the
the
rules that
regulations, if the regulations change midstream of an application, what happens to that application?
Old rules. It's the
Right.
rules that are in force when the application comes across the counter. And
That's
is
correct.
accepted by the commission, yes.
I think it's important for people to understand that.
Point well taken. I would be in favor of continuing this public hearing to our April 11th meeting at 7 p.m. So I'll reinstitute my motion to continue the public hearing to April 11th, 2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on that from the commission? All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? Any abstentions? So
Rich,
we were abstaining, Rich? Okay, so Rich Napolitano abstains from that motion.
Is Walter abstaining?
No, I'm in
Is-
favor.
Okay,
Okay,
just checking.
okay. Yes, I didn't hear any nays. And I didn't. So with that said, this public hearing is continued to April 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. A point of reference, Paula Stahl, will we be doing that via Zoom or will it be in person?
I think we'll still can be Zoom through April. The end of April is when
So let's assume
legislation-
that it will be a Zoom meeting. Any members that are in attendance, just confirm that just prior to our meeting to make sure whether we've moved to an in-person meeting. It's highly unlikely. I think all of us love the Zoom format. It's become very convenient. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your comments, and I appreciate. We will take seriously all testimony that we've heard both tonight, and there'll be time for some additional comments if necessary, because the public hearing will be reopened. And this is not binding on us, but I would think likely that we would close the public hearing that night and take action on this regulation amendment. Another point of reference, Paula, when a regulation is, if it were to be modified, there is an appeal period before it takes effect. Is that not correct?
Correct. There's a 15-day appeal period, and the 15-day clock starts when the notice is posted or published in the Chronicle or in the news.
So just
our local
please the
newspaper.
public be aware, this is a process which is governed by state statute. And we have to be very careful. And I take very seriously trying to explain to members of the public what the rules are that we operate under, because our authority comes from the state of Connecticut. Thank you, everybody. So next up will be under new business 7.1, Valley Street Investments. We're going to go back into our regular meeting and item 7.1, Valley Street Investments application for an event and wedding planning facility at 79 Cards Mill Road. We received an application, and all we're doing this evening is setting a public hearing date for this application. There'll be no testimony taken tonight. That will be taken at the public hearing. So that said, the applicant, is that you, Mr. Glad?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Is there any comment you would like to make as you submit the application?
The only thing that I would mention is, as we stated when we withdrew this original application, the biggest change here was that we were going away from the tent and going towards a permanent structure. And that is the biggest change or the change to the plans.
Okay.
And that was to help with all the conversation about, noise and to help to
Okay.
contain
Yeah, I'd
that.
like to, well, let's keep that as brief as we
Yep.
can. Because
And then
that
the
all
only
that
other-
that's information I'd like to see presented in the public hearing.
Okay, and the only other thing that I would ask is if you are setting a public hearing, I would prefer if it's okay with the commission to have it at the end of the month at your second meeting, only because the second month we have a lot of meetings that day. I call it Super Tuesday because there's so many towns with meetings and we have a lot of conflicts that usually happen that night,
Okay.
if that's possible.
Well, we have a public hearing that night for
Actually,
a variety of zoning regulation changes that are proposed. I
Excuse me,
don't
Rick.
anticipate, yes,
Excuse me,
Paul?
Rick, we have to wait at least 30 days because the application needs 30-day notification to the town of Lebanon and the Southeast Council of Governments.
So we're
because-
likely to go to our
May
May
9th.
9th meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we accept the we receive the application and set a public hearing for May 9th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion from the commission?
All set.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any noes?
Aye.
And who would that be from?
Walt.
Well, see, you're voting against setting it
No,
for that date?
In favor.
Oh, you're in favor, so that's an aye. Okay,
Yes.
so no, are there any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, so that's unanimous. So the public hearing for this application is set for May 9th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you for your time tonight.
No, thank you. Next up, discussion of regulation revisions. Paula, we have a fairly quiet meeting on the 11th of April. Why don't we get into the discussions at that time, unless there's some reason why you would like to get into more detail about this evening?
No, there's nothing pressing on any of them.
Okay,
At some point, maybe on the 11th, the commission could consider adopting the affordable housing plan.
that would be great. Okay, so I'm going to go through, any commission members like to do anything different?
That'd be fine.
Yep. I'm sorry, this isn't a public part of the comment part of the meeting. I have somebody from Catherine's iPad. If you have questions, just wait till audience of citizens and I can answer any questions then. Anything under communications and reports? Okay. Anything in our commission open discussion? Anything anybody would like to bring up? Rich?
I would. You know, we have our open discussion, our audience of citizens. I understand at the beginning of the meeting that we don't want to talk about what's in the meeting. But at the end of the meeting, I think it would be more appropriate if citizens want to make a comment about the meeting, they should be able to.
They
That's
can,
generally
because
why
we have
people-
two audience of citizens on the agenda. We have one at the beginning and one at the end.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The one at the beginning is fine how you do it. People want to make comments, but the one at the end, I believe citizens should be able to comment on the meeting. I think that's appropriate.
Okay,
The only, excuse me,
It's
the
a-
only point I would like to make is that anything that someone says during the audience of citizens that pertains to, let's say the public hearing that we had open tonight, cannot be taken as testimony. We can, the commission, by statute, again, the commission can only take testimony on an application during the public hearing.
Yeah,
Just
I
in the same-
understand that.
No, I
It's
just wanted to make sure people understood that.
I think we all understood that, Paula.
I know the members do. It
Yeah.
was, it
Well,
was
this
directed
was-
at the audience.
It's a good education. I think it's a good education for citizens who may not understand. So if they ask a question, you can explain what happened in that part of the meeting. You know, there's a lot
That's a
there.
point well taken. I appreciate what you're saying, very much so. Thank you. No, I'm glad you brought that up, Rich. Thank you.
All right, good.
Yeah, and when we open the audience of citizens, I'm going to address that a little. That's probably that's a great suggestion. Under communication reports, anything, Paula? We went past that, forgive me. So next up is the audience of citizens, and to Rich Napolitano's point, just so that we can be clear about things. So we're very careful not to take public testimony or information in when especially when we have a public hearing that's active. we don't want to be in a position where we're receiving information that might theoretically influence a commission member while we have an active public hearing open, because we want the forum where we accept that information to be balanced and even and fair and accessible to everybody, so that everybody has a chance to comment in a publicly recorded format. That if somebody were to be in our public hearing and then withdraw, then leave the meeting because they thought comment periods were open, we can't be accepting more information about that topic that's up. So there was somebody, first person up was Catherine's iPad.
Hi, I'm not sure it's appropriate since you've kind of
Could you
put
give
this
us your
to the
first
next.
and last
I'm
name
sorry,
and your address?
Sure, Catherine Road, 27 Lake Road. I'm speaking about the affordable housing and just a comment. Can I comment on
No,
that?
yes, yeah, we're wide open there, please.
Okay, I'm speaking on behalf of the Commission on Aging. I'm the chairperson. And 8 years ago, we did a survey about trying to get senior housing, affordable senior housing in town. At that time, we did a survey for the entire town. And our top 3 issues were transportation, isolation, and housing. We've taken care of the transportation. Fortunately, we have now a town van and medical car, which has been wonderful. Both have helped to alleviate some of the isolation, but the housing we've not been able to address. So in this plan that you have proposed or have started to talk about getting affordable housing and senior housing, we're hoping is sincere consideration in this. The thing that after I read through it and we discussed it at our meeting was
We're going
that
to
the
try not to get into a lot of detail because we do have a public hearing coming. We're not constrained right now because we haven't opened a public hearing. But if you have real detailed information, this would be better to wait for the public hearing.
The only detail I'm going to accept is that you had put in the 5-year plan 10 units. And we said at that time, 30 units was more appropriate. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. I strongly encourage you both to send some written communication and email, simple email to our town planner about that.
Okay.
Because we're going to consider this affordable housing plan. And having something in writing that we can receive is helpful, but I would also encourage you to testify at the public hearing. In this case, the affordable housing plan isn't a part of a public hearing process. It's simply, we're required to adopt the plan, and it's adopted by typically a commission vote we don't need to advertise it to the public. So in that sense, if you could get something to us in writing about what you've given us tonight, I'd really appreciate it. And I would strongly encourage you to attend that meeting and discuss it. And but if you interact with Paula Stahl, our town planner, and you point out something that we might better address within that proposed plan, we're all ears, and we appreciate your work providing that kind of information to us.
Thank you. It was suggested to me that I attend this meeting tonight for that reason.
No, I'm glad you brought it up
So,
now, because
that's why.
now it's on the record, and but I would strongly ask that you send something, a simple
Will
email
do.
is sufficient.
Will
Okay.
do.
And I
Thank you.
appreciate the work that you do. We've received a lot of things that have ended up in the plan of conservation and development from the various commissions in town, and very specifically about our perspective on senior housing within the town as it relates to the plan of conservation and development. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there, next up was Mr. Stump? I have that, I'm going in order on my screen. Did you want to say anything else? Is that a yes? No? You're muted. I'll move on to Miss Briggs. Ms. Briggs.
Yes, to the discussion you had about the timing of the applications, Mr. Tabor was raising a point, but it was somewhat inaccurate as to what was stated. An application isn't accepted unless it is actually a complete application. It isn't just the submission of it. It has to be an actual completed application. Ms. Stahl indicated that it's a complete application. Their own statement says they haven't completed the sound study and there is no lighting plan. And given what we all went through in the last round of public hearings with an incomplete application and submissions of modifications of the proposal being submitted mid-public hearing, it meant that the public didn't even get to comment on the proposal that was actually being submitted because it was a moving target. And I can see that happening again because it isn't a complete application, despite what Ms. Stahl said. And the sound study is a very incredibly important part of this, as is the lighting plan, neither of which are in this package and should be part of it before it's accepted as a complete application. That's the point I'm trying to make, is that if this is not a complete application, then it should get rejected and they can resubmit it when they got a complete application. Then the regs that are in effect at the time the application is accepted as complete are the regs that are applicable, which is exactly the point Mr. Tabor was making, that if this got voted on tonight or it gets voted on the 11th and their application should have been rejected because it wasn't complete. Yes, now they are essentially grandfathered in and can try and get in under the old regs, but it shouldn't have been accepted. And that's what I wanted to say at the beginning of the meeting. And that wasn't information that it should have been allowed because it informs what you're doing, not to the substance of the application, but to the procedures that you're following. And once again, you guys are making them up as you go. This isn't a complete application. And
Yeah,
it
I
shouldn't
don't think
have been
that we're
accepted.
making things up as we go, you know.
Well, you are, because the whole
know,
comment was.
I understand that
it's
you have
open.
your perspective,
You know,
but
the gentleman,
hurling insults at the commission,
you-
it's inappropriate. It's not necessary.
then somebody correct my statement of the law, but I believe I'm accurate. It has to be a complete application in order for it to trigger any of the deadlines or any of the rights of an application. Up until then, it's an incomplete application and is not have any legal substance. And I believe I'm correct on that. And that wasn't what was stated that the commission was relying on for their vote. To the point that the gentleman made about hearing from other residents. Well, guess what? The reason you're not going to hear from other residents is they weren't affected by this proposal that came in that surprised everybody. And to hear the folks from Valley stated, basically the town wrote this for them. We weren't aware of it. And now that we're aware of it, sure, we're speaking up. But the folks on Lake Road aren't quite as worried about it because there isn't 25 acres sitting around that somebody's going to plop a wedding or commercial event hall on it. We are, because we already have somebody who's got an application pending. So it didn't, I understand and I respect that you did want to leave it open. I can understand that. But the discussion about the timing clearly means that if this application is treated as complete, which you did, and it shouldn't have been, then yes, they get to go ahead under the old regs. If you'd rejected it as incomplete, they would have had to wait till the next meeting and maybe get it submitted at that point if they had everything ready. So it made a big difference. And I think you all knew, some of you knew perfectly well what was going on at the time.
If you want to hurl personal insults,
It's not
do
an
it
insult.
somewhere
I
else.
think you knew exactly
I
what
won't
was going
accept
on.
it. Please
There's
mute
no
her at this
insult there,
point.
Mr. Nassif.
Please
That's
mute
how-
her. Thank you. I'm not going to speak to the insults. Just we conduct ourselves in a very open and respectful manner. Is there anything from any other member of the public that you would like? Okay. That being said,
Mr. Kabbalah has his hand up.
Mr. Kabbalah, did you want to say something?
Yes. 37 Lake Road, Columbia, Connecticut. I hear a lot about surveys and responding to surveys. And I get answers anywhere from 10 people to the whole town. The only way, in my opinion, the only way to use that kind of information is if we have a town-wide referendum by machine stating who's in favor and who's not. That's the only way we can use that type of information. I hope all these people that are throwing out these figures would keep their mouths shut. The other thing is, I hear a lot about character of town, character of beauty. Well, you have to look at a time frame when you talk about character of town. Are we going back to the
Are you trying to comment on the item that's under our public hearing right now? Mr. Kabbalah, point of order. Are you commenting about?
Thank you, goodbye.
Mr. Kabbalah, were you commenting about the item that's under discussion in our public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, so that's inappropriate at this point. This is an open discussion about other items that are not already on our agenda. So, and if there's other, items that do need to be addressed, this would be the time, but having comments that should be only received through our public hearing need to be while the public hearing is in place. I have something from Mr. Mooney.
39 Golden Road. Didn't know if I needed to say that again.
Yeah, could you just say that again for the record? It cut off.
39 Golden Road.
And it's Larry Mooney.
Greg, no, Larry's my father.
Okay. Okay.
For public hearings in 2 weeks, you said you're gonna, reach out, get other people's opinions.
I didn't say that.
That was
I said if there was any additional, no,
so
there was a
that's what
comment
I'm
made
trying
by
to clarify.
I just want to clarify, if you said something and I know it not to be correct, I just want to clarify. Mr. Powell said that if there's other testimony, tell me if I'm paraphrasing inaccurately, Bob, that people have an opportunity to comment, and I'm really summarizing what you said. But we don't reach out. We just leave the public hearing open for whomever wants to come in with testimony. So
I'm asking, so it just is gonna hang now.
Yep.
For another-
could you speak a little louder? We can't hear you, Mr.
For
Mooney.
some reason, is it better?
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right. No, that's what I was wondering, if we were just gonna kick this off for another 2 weeks and presume like we did tonight for the next public hearing for this matter.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You answered my question by paraphrasing, so I'm good. It's just we've done a lot of these public hearings. We did 2 of the public hearings for, the previous, application. They got rejected. We're having another public hearing. So, it's just, we had the community out for this call, new people coming. We had a lot of people at the previous public hearing. So now we're going to have another public hearing. It's just,
Well, it isn't another public hearing. It's a continuation of the public hearing that was started
Correct.
tonight.
Correct, but we have continuations of the continuations. So it's.
No, we're talking about, at this point, one continuation from the public hearing this evening.
Yes, but we had the public hearing for the first time. They did the application. I'm going on the special permit, public hearing. Now, if you accept that application, we're going to have more public hearings for the new application again.
That's correct.
Yes, it's just, we're sending our message here, and the people on this call are, telling you how they feel, and, we keep doing this over and over. I'm good.
Okay.
I made my point.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else under audience of citizens? Carol Williamson?
I think now in the modern day of technology, the town has the emails for, I don't know what the percentage of the people in town is, but during an emergency, they can send out an email. I think it's time that the different boards and commissions send an email, especially about something as important as this, to every household, informing them of what it's all about and inviting them, if they have something to say about that, to join the meeting. And I think that's probably the best way to get a better input of what the town feels. I'm sure that probably 30, 40, 60, even 75% of the people in town don't understand the ramifications of either the adoption of this regulation or the withdrawal of this regulation. And if they could be more informed, it would be a far more democratic process.
If you don't mind, I'd like to speak to what you just said. I
Fine.
100% agree with you, Carol. In theory, I would rather have more participation than less participation and more information from the public. Unfortunately, what we can't do is operate that's not in harmony with state statute about notification, and we can't treat one application different than another application. So because we think there's a lot of interest to send out a broadcast email on one application but not on another, would be treating them in a less than balanced way. But I think it would be better if on every application of any sort, everybody in town got a notice. But then we
I
might all be
agree.
getting 50 or 70 emails a month from the town of Columbia, and it may be its own thing. But I agree, because a suggestion came from within town government, why don't we send notice out on a given application? I said, well, we can't treat
I'm
them
saying
differently.
every application, a
We can't-
notification of what your discussion every month.
You bring up what I think is a very valid point. And I'm in agreement, the more we could let people know, but what we can't do is treat one application different than the next.
I'm not suggesting you do. I'm
I know, I
suggesting-
realize, I know you know that. I know you know
Yeah.
what the law is, I'm basically trying to support your comment.
Okay. Who do I talk to?
If you
Mark?
know, probably to our town administrator and our first select person, and to reach out to our town attorney and find out what the legal process would be if we wanted to adopt that. And are we allowed to do it? Isn't it in harmony with state statute for notification, or isn't it? There would have to be a fair amount of looking into it.
Sure.
But it's
Yeah,
a
I'll
really
do
good
that.
point.
I'll do
Okay,
that.
I have Mrs. Kabala.
Carol Kabala, 37 Lake Road.
Hi.
I just, well, I was going to speak to something like Carol Williamson was suggesting. I know that planning and zoning meetings are important, is why I was at the meeting back in April or the next one after that. I received the notification of meetings and the agenda from the planning and zoning clerk each month. I haven't seen the people on that raise very much since you've been discussing the topics that you've been discussing recently. I suggest that if people want to know what's happening and they are really interested in the zoning in town, that they get on that email list with the clerk. Thank you.
Thank you. Point well taken. So is anything else under audience of citizens? Okay, I'm going to move. There's nothing that we're going to discuss in executive session, so we don't need to move into that. Next up is adjournment. I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Rich, you had your hand up first. You're seconding that?
Yep, yes,
All
sir.
those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Unanimous? Thank you, everybody, for attending. I appreciate your time. Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night.
Good night.
See ya.
Good night, all.
Josh, you can